The storm came from the void, a bleeding wound in the very fabric of reality. Above the war-torn world of Mortia's Prime, the heavens tore open. This wasn't the usual, chaotic madness of the warp that the defenders had grown grimly accustomed to. No, this was something else. Something deliberate. A vessel, sleek and sharp as a shard of obsidian, ripped through the veil, trailing cosmic energies that hissed and spat at the churning chaos around it. It was a dagger of pure black, plunging through the maelstrom of the Imperium and into the embattled atmosphere of the Imperial world. For the beleaguered soldiers of the Kadian, 812th, huddled in their trenches, the sight was just another harbinger of doom. Mortia's Prime was already a lost cause. The forces of the ruinous powers had swarmed the planet, a tide of demons and twisted mortals crashing against the futile breakwater of the Imperial Guard. The sky was a bruised purple, choked with the smoke of burning cities and the unnatural light of profane rituals. 4 weeks, they had fought and died, their last gunfire a pitiful whisper against the roar of damnation. Hope was a currency they had long since spent. Then came the Black Ship. It didn't drift or tumble like a crippled vessel. It failed with intent, a meteor guided by an unseen hand, carving a fiery path toward the heart of the most intense fighting. It crashed miles from the Cadian's position, a cataclysmic impact that shook the very foundations of the world. The ground bucked, and a plume of dust and fire clawed its way into the sky, a new, angry peak in the planet's ravaged skyline. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent. Even the gibbering hordes of chaos seemed to pause, their bloodlust momentarily forgotten in the face of this new, unknown variable. Through long-range Pictcasters and Auspex scopes, the Imperial Command watched the crash site with a mixture of terror and desperate curiosity. What new hell had the galaxy decided to unleash upon them? Was it some new breed of Xenos? A lost relic? Or, Emperor forbid, another, even more terrible agent of chaos? The grainy footage showed the wreckage, a jagged scar in the earth, glowing with an internal, malevolent light. Then, movement. A figure was rising from the inferno. It was tall, impossibly so, and clad head to toe in armor as black as the void between stars. The armor was smooth, impossibly sleek, unlike the baroque and ornate designs of the Astartes or the crude iron of the traders. It was a shell of polished midnight, its form both alien and disturbingly humanoid. As it stood, its silhouette cutting through the smoke and fire, a sound carried across the battlefield. A sound that would be seared into the minds of all who heard it. It was a deep, rhythmic, mechanical breathing, a respirator cycling with the relentless, metronomic cadence of a funeral drum. Inhale, exhale, a sound of cold, empty lungs and tireless machinery. 2. The terrified guardsmen watching on their flickering screens. The figure was a terrifying enigma. Its presence was immense, a palpable weight that pressed down on the psyche. The air around it seemed to shimmer, as if reality itself was recoiling from its touch. This was a being of immense power. The psychers in the command bunker cried out, clutching their heads as they felt not the familiar taint of the warp, but a cold, crushing, and utterly disciplined force. A void of emotion, a singularity of pure, focused will. The forces of chaos, their initial hesitation broken, reacted with instinctual aggression. A tide of bloodletters, the foot soldiers of Khorne, charged toward the wreckage, their hellblades glowing with infernal heat. They were a torrent of muscle and fury, eager to claim the skull of this newcomer for their bloody god. They surged forward, a red wave of slaughter, and then they stopped. The black-armored figure hadn't moved a muscle. It simply raised a gaunted hand. The lead demon, a hulking beast, twice the height of a man, was lifted from its feet as if by an invisible hand. It struggled, its powerful limbs flailing uselessly as it was choked by an unseen force. Its guttural roars became strangled gasps. With a casual clench of its fist, the dark figure snapped the demon's neck with a sickening crack. The creature dropped to the ground, a broken puppet. The rest of the demonic horde faltered, their bloodlust turning to a primal confusion and fear they had not felt in millennia. This was not a warrior they understood. He did not roar challenges or charge with the chain. He fought with a silent, invisible force, a power that treated the physical laws of the universe as mere suggestions. He pointed a finger, and a group of cultists, clawing their way over the wreckage, suddenly clutched their chests, their bodies contorting as their own hearts were seemingly crushed within their rib cages. He made a sweeping gesture, and a volley of bolt pistol rounds fired at him simply stopped in midair, frozen a foot from his chest before clattering harmlessly to the ground. From his belt he drew a weapon. It was a simple, metallic hilt. With the press of a button, a blade of pure, crimson light erupted from it with a hungry, humming snap. It wasn't a power sword, nor a force weapon. It was a focused beam of incandescent energy, a lightsaber, and he wielded it with an elegance that was utterly alien. He moved now, not with the brutal charge of an Astartes, but with a flowing, deliberate grace. He became a whirlwind of black and red, his blade a blur of motion that left trails of searing light in the air. He deflected enemy fire, bisected demons, and carved a path through the traitorous ranks with an efficiency that was both beautiful and terrifying to behold. The Imperial Guard could only watch in stunned silence. Who was this being? The black armor, the crimson blade, the terrifying, invisible power. To the superstitious and the desperate, it was a sign, a god of war sent by the Emperor in their darkest hour. An avenging angel cloaked in night, he moved with the authority of a general and the power of a demigod, his every action precise and devastatingly effective. He was turning the tide. He was single-handedly annihilating a chaos host that had brought an entire imperial world to its knees. But to the more lenient, to the inquisitorial acolytes and the veteran officers who had seen the true horrors of the galaxy, a different, more chilling possibility emerged. This wasn't an angel. The power he wielded was not of the Emperor. It was something else, something dark. That cursing, cold-blooded focus, the utter lack of mercy, the crimson blade that sang a song of death. He was no demon of the warp, that much was clear. His power was too controlled, too sterile. But he was no servant of the Imperium either. This was a dark lord from another reality, a master of a power they had no name for, a force of nature unto himself. He was a tyrant, a conqueror, a being whose very presence was a violation of their existence. As he stood amidst the broken bodies of his enemies, the rhythmic sound of his breathing carrying over the winds of Mortia's prime, the Imperials felt a new kind of dread. They had been saved from the fire, but they may have just been delivered into the crushing, absolute zero of the void. The Black Star had fallen upon their world, and its name, whispered across a billion stars in a galaxy far, far away, was Vader. For the survivors of Mortia's prime, the war was far from over. It had just entered a new, and perhaps even darker, chapter. What happens when the immovable object of the Imperium meets the unstoppable force of the Sith? This is just the beginning of a galaxy-spanning collision. If you want to see how the Master of the Dark Side fares against the horrors of the 41st Millennium, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. The galaxy is a crucible of horrors, a realm where gods of chaos feast on souls and endless war is the only constant. Into this maelstrom of despair, a new power has arrived, a figure clad in black, his breathing a rhythmic death knell. His name is Vader, and the very laws of this galaxy tremble before him. But it is not the physical realm that truly feels his presence. It is, to warp the roiling sea of psychic energy and raw emotion that now ripples with a profound and terrifying confusion. Imagine a battlefield, thick with the stench of corruption and the screams of the damned. Traitoras Tachis, once paragons of humanity, now twisted servants of chaos, charge forward. Alongside them, demons spill forth from rents in reality, creatures of nightmare-given form. They are the instruments of the ruinous powers, seemingly unstoppable. Yet they halt, not out of fear of bolt or fire or chainsword, but because of a pressure, an unseen hand that grips their very essence. Vader stands amidst the carnage, a silent monolith. He does not swing his crimson blade. He does not move a muscle. He simply reaches out, not with his hand, but with his mind, with a power that this universe has never witnessed. A world eater, frothing with berserker rage, is lifted from his feet, his armor crumpling inward as if crushed by a giant's fist. A tide of nerdlings, giggling with pestilence, suddenly wither and turn to dust, their foul life force snuffed out in an instant. A dominant of Slanesh, poised to strike, freezes in place, its face a mask of agony, before it is torn apart by an invisible force, its psychic form shredded into nothingness. He doesn't touch them. He doesn't need to. This is the Force, an energy field that binds all living things, wielded with a precision and purity that is alien to this reality, to the psychers and sorcerers of the 41st Millennium. Power is a bargain, a dangerous pact made with the entities of the warp. They draw upon its chaotic energies, risking their sanity and their souls with every whispered incantation. Their power is a roaring, untamed fire, always threatening to consume them. But Vader's power, it is different. It is a deep, cold ocean of focused will. When he reaches into the warp, it is not as a supplicant, but as a master. The Imperium recoils. It recognizes the telltale signature of psychic might, the raw potential to bend reality. Yet, it finds no purchase, no hook of corruption. There is no desperate plea to Tsinch for knowledge, no bloodthirsty cry to Khorne for strength, no whisper of despair for Nurgle's embrace, no seeking of sensation for There is only a void, a calm, disciplined, and utterly dominant will. To the demons, it is a horrifying paradox. They are beings of pure psychic energy, of emotion given consciousness. They expect to find a reflection of themselves in any powerful psyche or a flicker of ambition, a seed of rage, a kernel of despair they can latch onto and exploit. When they face Vader, they find only his singular, unyielding purpose. His anger is a tool, not a master. His suffering is a furnace that forges his strength, not a weakness to be preyed upon. The warp, in all its chaotic sentience, is baffled. It is like trying to corrupt a storm or bargain with a black hole. Vader's power feels psychic, yet it is utterly, terrifyingly pure and tethered to the gods that hold this galaxy in their grip. This unprecedented phenomenon does not go unnoticed. Across the Imperium of Man, astropaths feel a tremor in the celestial choir, a new, powerful note that is neither imperial nor chaotic. On Holy Terra within the labyrinthine halls of the Imperial Palace, the Inquisition takes note. These are the secret police of the Imperium, the guardians of humanity's soul, and their mandate is absolute. To hunt the witch, the Aelia, the heretic. In their arcane devotes and scrying chambers, they analyze the reports trickling in from a dozen war zones. A Shadowwraith, an ebon phantom that commands an unseen power. Entire platoons of Chaos Marines annihilated. Demon princes banished not by faith and holy right, but by a gesture. The evidence is undeniable. A new player has entered the great game, one whose abilities defy all known classifications of psychic phenomena. Is this a new evolution of the Psyker? A mutation so radical it exists outside the established categories? Or is it something else entirely? The Ordo Malias, the demon hunters, are intrigued and horrified. This power repels the demonic, yet it is not born of faith in the Emperor. It is a secular, personal power that rivals that of the most potent librarians. The Ordo Xenos, the Elion hunters, wonder if this is the weapon of some unknown ancient race, a psychic technology beyond human comprehension. But it is the Ordo Hereticus that is most concerned. To them, any power not sanctioned by the Imperial Creed is heresy. This anomaly, this being who wields psychic force with the purity of a saint but the cold efficiency of a machine, is the ultimate heretical paradox. He is too powerful to be ignored, too strange to be understood, and too dangerous to be left unchecked. The High Lords of the Inquisition convened in shadowed chambers. Debates rage. Some argue for capture, for study. Imagine weaponizing this force. Imagine creating soldiers who can crush demons with their minds without risking demonic possession. The potential is limitless, a chance to turn the tide in the endless war against chaos. They see a tool, a resource to be exploited for the good of the Imperium, no matter the cost. Others, more cautious and more zealous, argue for extermination. They see only the unknown, and the unknown is the breeding ground of heresy. Power without faith is a lure of chaos, even if chaos itself seems unable to claim it. What if this is merely a new, more subtle form of corruption, a deception by Tzinch, so grand that its true nature is hidden even from the other gods? To them, the risk is too great. The anomaly must be purged. Destroy it. Burn it from the galaxy before its influence can spread. The verdict is passed down, sealed with the inquisitorial rosette. The entity known as Vader is now designated Anomaly Primus. He is to be considered a threat of the highest order. Kill teams or dispatch squads of elite Grey Knights, the incorruptible demon hunters, assassins from the Officio Assassinorum, living weapons trained for a single purpose, are given their target. Death Watch kill times, the best of the best from 100 Space Marine chapters, are mobilized. They will hunt Vader. They will come at him with faith, steel, and fury. They will bring the might of the Imperium to bear on this lone, dark figure. And they will learn, as the demons and traitors before them learned, that the laws of their galaxy, the power of their gods, and the might of their armies mean nothing to a man who commands the Force. The hunt is on, but the question is not whether the Inquisition can find Vader. The question is, what will be left of them when they do? The Force has come to the 41st Millennium, and the galaxy will be forever changed. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the what-if of Warhammer and Star Wars lore. If you enjoyed this cosmic collision, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter in this epic saga. On the fortress world of Mortius Prime, under a sky choked with the smoke of endless war, the Iron Warriors had come to feast. For months, their siege lines had tightened like a noose, their demon-forged war engine spitting incandescent death at the beleaguered Imperial defenders. The air itself thrummed with a cacophony of heavy bolters, less cannon fire, and the guttural chants of chaos. On the walls that had stood for millennia were now little more than jagged teeth of rubble, and the morale of the Cadian and Vostroyan regiments was crumbling just as fast. From the command deck of his mobile fortress, Warsmith Krendel surveyed the battlefield with contemptuous satisfaction. His form was a grotesque fusion of scarred ceramite and demonic flesh, a testament to his long service to the ruinous powers. Below, his legionaries advance, their iron-helmet visages reflecting the hellish glow of the burning city. Victory was a certainty. Another world would be ground to dust beneath their iron treads, another offering for the dark gods. Then, something changed. A new sound cut through the din of battle, a sound that was both a piercing shriek and a deep, resonant hum. It was a sound that made the very air grow cold and still. The Vox channels, once a torrent of battle cries and tactical reports, suddenly crackled with panicked, garbled transmissions. Krendel leaned forward, his augmented eyes scanning the chaotic sensorium displays. An anomaly. A single, unidentified vessel had breached Mortius Prime's ravaged orbital defenses. It was small, angular, and black as the void itself. Impossible. No sooner had the ship appeared than it was gone, vanished from the scopes. But its presence was now felt on the ground. A figure, clad head to toe in obsidian armor, had appeared amidst the most intense fighting. Where this warrior walked, the tide of battle turned instantly. He moved not with the lumbering gait of a space marine, but with a terrifying, fluid grace. In his hand, a blade of pure, crimson energy ignited, casting a malevolent glow on the carnage around him. The Iron Warriors, veterans of 1,000 bloody campaigns, hesitated. These were transhuman demigods who knew no fear, yet a primal uncertainty crept into their corrupted hearts. They raised their bolters and fired, unleashing a hailstorm of explosive rounds that would have vaporized a lesser being. The figures simply raised a gaunted hand. The bolts stopped midair, frozen a few feet from their target, before clattering uselessly to the ground. Then he advanced. He was a whirlwind of black armor and red light. He didn't just fight, he deconstructed. An Iron Warrior charged, Chenax roaring. The black-clad figure sidestepped the clumsy attack, his crimson blade scything through the Chaos Marine's power pack. The warrior exploded in a flash of plasma and shrapnel. Another lunged, only to find himself lifted from his feet by an unseen force. his gorget crushing inwards until his helmet popped from his shoulders in a spray of gore. The machines, the demon engines, that were the pride of the 4 Legion, reacted with instinctual terror. A defiler, a monstrous blend of arachnid limbs and demonic artillery, charged forward, its battle cannon aimed to obliterate the lone warrior. But as it drew near, its machine spirit screamed. Its legs locked up, its targeting systems went haywire, and its own cannon began to twist and melt as if under immense heat. The figure gestured, and the mighty war machine crumpled in on itself, crushed into a ball of screaming metal and weeping demonic ichor. Warsmith Crendel watched from his command throne, disbelief warring with a cold, rising fury. Who was this? An assassin from the Officio Assassinorum? A new breed of Astartes? No. This was something else entirely. Something ancient and terrible. All units. He bellowed into the command box, his voice a rasp of static and hatred. Concentrate all fire on the lone hostile. Annihilate him. He descended from his fortress, his personal Terminator guard flanking him. Crendel was a giant, even among Chaos Lords, his armor adorned with the skulls of champions he had slain. In one hand, he wielded a demon-infused thunder hammer, crackling with dark energy. He would crush this impudent whelp himself and offer his soul to the Pantheon. On the battlefield, the lone warrior had carved a path of absolute devastation. He moved through the ranks of the Iron Warriors like a phantom, a specter of death. A squad of havocs set up their heavy weapons, only to have their own ammunition crates detonate with concussive force, vaporizing them. A hell brute, its sarcophagus containing the maddened remains of a once noble warrior, charged blindly, only to be bisected from shoulder to hip by a single, effortless slash of the crimson blade. From the shattered parapets of a command bastion, a small group of Imperial observers watched in stunned silence. Among them was Inquisitor Lyra Valerius of the Ordo Hereticus, her face pale beneath her hood. The Imperial Guard troopers around her, men and women who had fought and bled for months, slowly lowered their lamps. Some fell to their knees, their expressions a mixture of awe and terror. They were witnessing not just a battle, but a divine judgment. "What is he?" Acadian sergeant whispered, his voice trembling. Inquisitor Valerius could only watch as the black figure met Warsmith Crendel's charge. The ground shook as the 2 titans clashed. Crendel's thunderhammer swung in a devastating arc, powerful enough to shatter a tank. But it never landed. The black warrior, Vader, met the blow with his Lightsaber, the blades locking in a screech of tortured energies. "You fight with borrowed power, slave of chaos." Vader's voice resonated, amplified by his helmet, a sound that seemed to vibrate in the very soul. "You know nothing of true strength." With a flick of his wrist, Vader disarmed Crendel, the massive thunderhammer flying from the warsmith's grip. Crendel roared in frustration and lunged, his power fist striking out. Vader was no longer there. He was behind him. A single, precise thrust of the Lightsaber pierced a fusion of metal and demon flesh at the base of Crendel's spine. The warsmith froze, his immense body shuddering. The dark energies that animated him sputtered and died. With a final gurgling sieg, the master of the siege collapsed, his corrupted armor clattering on the blood-soaked ground. With their leader dead and their war machines inexplicably failing, the Iron Warriors finally broke. For the first time in a century, they turned and fled, a disorganized rout of panicked traitors. The siege of Mortias Prime was over. Vader stood motionless amidst the wreckage, his red blade casting long, menacing shadows. He surveyed the field of dead traitors, his breathing a steady, mechanical rhythm that was the only sound in the sudden silence. On the bastion wall, Inquisitor Valerius clutched the Aquila hanging from her neck, her knuckles white. She had spent her life hunting the enemies of mankind, studying the nature of the demonic and the divine. She had read of the Emperor's fury, of the righteous anger that had scoured galaxies in the Great Crusade. She had always imagined it as a golden, blinding light. She had been wrong. Looking at the dark, solitary figure on the field below, a chilling realization dawned upon her. This was not a hero. This was not a savior in shining armor. This was something far more primal, She whispered the words to herself. A prayer and a curse. He is the Emperor's wrath made flesh. Thank you so much for watching this tale from the grim darkness of the far future. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by hitting that like button, and consider subscribing to the channel for more Warhammer lore and epic battles. The siege of Mortius Prime had dragged on for 3 bloody years. The planet, a fortress world of grim determination, was cracking under the relentless pressure of the Iron Warriors. From their trenches, the Traitor Legion hammered the hive cities, their artillery a constant, thunderous drumbeat of doom. Hope was a flickering candle flame in a hurricane, about to be extinguished. The guardsmen of the Mortian 33rd knew their end was nigh. The sky itself seemed to weep ash and oil, choked by the fumes of demonic engines. Then he arrived, not with the grand fanfare of a relief fleet, not with the roar of drop pods screaming from orbit. He came aboard a single, angular shuttle, a black dart that cut through the smog-filled sky and landed with unnerving silence in the heart of the command bastion. The ramp lowered, and from the shadowed interior, a figure emerged. He was a colossus of polished black armor, his presence a void in the warp, a sudden, chilling silence in the cacophony of war. A deep, mechanically augmented breathing echoed in the sudden quiet, a sound more menacing than any artillery shell. Lord Inquisitor Kyria Draxus, her face a mask of hardened disbelief, watched as the being strode past her, his long cape billowing like a funeral shroud. He didn't acknowledge the generals, the commissars, or even her. His focus was singular, fixed on the battlefield beyond the Ferrocrete walls. Who? What is that? A trembling subaltern asked, his voice barely a whisper. Kyria couldn't answer. She had felt his arrival not through the warp, but as a pressure drop in reality itself, a cold, focused power that was utterly alien. The entity, this Vader, moved to the primary voxcaster. He didn't ask for permission. His gloved hand rested on the console, and a burst of static erupted before his voice boomed across every friendly and enemy channel. I am Vader. Your salvation has arrived. Your destruction is imminent. The message was for both sides. To the defenders, a sliver of terrifying hope. To the besiegers, an audacious challenge. From his command bunker, Warsmith Krendel of the Iron Warriors laughed. The sound was like grinding rock, filtered through his helmet's vox grill. Another loyalist champion, another deluded fool sent by the Corpse Emperor. He'd broken dozens. He watched on his primary pick screen as the single black figure strode out from the bastion, main gate, and onto the cratered Nomen. Land. Alone. Magnificent arrogance, Krendel growled. All units, concentrate fire on that lone fool. I want nothing left but a smear. The order was given. The air tore apart. Basilisks, Medusas, and defilers unleashed a storm of high explosives. The very ground bucked and heaved as shells rained down, creating a maelstrom of fire, shrapnel, and vaporized earth. For a full minute, the bombardment was absolute. Nothing could survive that. Krendel leaned back, a satisfied grunt escaping him. The picked feed cleared, the smoke momentarily parting, and he was still there. Untouched. Not a scratch on his polished armor. He hadn't moved a single inch. A collective gasp went through the command bunkers of both the Loyalists and the traitors. The shells had either detonated prematurely in the air around him, or veered off course as if slapped aside by an unseen hand. Vader stood impassively amidst the burning craters, the rhythmic hiss of his respirator, the only sound in the sudden, stunned silence. Then, he ignited his weapon. A crimson blade of pure energy sprang to life with a hungry snappiest, casting a bloody glow on his dark form. He began to walk. He walked into the teeth of the Iron Warrior's lines. He didn't run. He didn't charge. He advanced with the inexorable pace of a glacier, a force of nature that could not be hurried or halted. The first to meet him were the cultists, a screaming tide of mutated flesh and rusty blades. They were not cut down. They were pushed. A wave of invisible force erupted from Vader's outstretched hand, and the entire front rank of the horde was pulped, their bodies flung back into their comrades like gory projectiles. Next came the Chaos Space Marines, Iron Warriors, cladding baroque rust-streaked power armor. Their bolters roaring, they were veterans of the Long War, masters of siegecraft, their resolve as unyielding as their namesake. Against Vader, they were children with toys. Bolter-shells stopped in mid-air, inches from his body, held in a shimmering field of energy before dropping harmlessly to the ground. He moved among them, his red blade a blur. He didn't just parry their chainswords. He bisected them, armor and all. A single, elegant swing, and a traitor Marine would fall into perfectly cauterized halves. He used the Force not just as a shield, but as a weapon, crushing helmets within their armor, snapping spines with a casual flick of his wrist. From the walls of Mortius Prime, the defenders watched in awestruck horror and wonder. "He moves like death," a guardsman whispered. His eye is wide. Another added, "And the machines, they scream in fear." It was true. The demonic engines, the defilers and mauler fins, constructs of possessed metal and insane machine spirits, seemed to recoil. As Vader approached a charging Malerfind, the beast of brass and iron actually tried to skid to a halt, its metallic limbs screeching. It was too late. Vader raised a hand, and the massive war engine was lifted from the ground, its multi-ton chassis groaning under an impossible strain. He clenched his fist, and the Malerfind was compressed, imploding into a twisted ball of scrap metal before being tossed aside. Warsmith Krendel could no longer afford to be amused. This was not a champion of the Imperium. This was something else. He is one man. Drown him in but bring the obliterators. He bellowed into the Vox. The hulking, mutated Marines, their flesh and armor merged with their demonic weaponry, teleported in around Vader. Flesh metal cannons morphed and grew, spitting torrents of plasma and melt of fire. Vader was a whirlwind of motion. His lightsaber became a shield of pure energy, deflecting shots back at his attackers. One obliterator's head was vaporized by its own redirected plasma blast. Another was seized by the Force, its own melt-a-cannon forced to its chest before it discharged, melting it from the inside out. Within moments, the elite of the warband were annihilated. Vader continued his slow, terrifying advance toward Krendel's command fortress. The warsmith knew he could not hide. This thing was coming for him. Clad in his own formidable Terminator armor, Krendel hefted his thunderhammer and stomped out to meet his fate. He was a giant of a man, augmented by dark science and demonic gifts, his armor plating thick enough to withstand a tank shell. "So, the loyalist dog comes to die," Krendel's voice boomed, crackling with warp energy. Vader simply looked at him, his head tilted slightly. "You are an antiquated weapon. Corrupted. Obsolete." The duel was brutally short. Krendel swung his thunderhammer, an arc of destructive energy designed to pulp anything it touched. Vader sidestepped it with impossible grace, the hammer cracking the ground where he had stood. He responded not with a flurry of blows, but with a single, precise thrust. The crimson blade went straight through the warsmith's chest plate, through the fused ribs and corrupted organs, and out his back. The power field of the thunderhammer flickered and died. Krendel looked down at the glowing blade, bisecting his torso, a look of utter shock on his faceplate. "How?" he gargled, black blood frothing from his Vox grill. Vader held him there, impaled. "The power you serve has blinded you. There is a power in the universe that is not of the warp, a power you cannot comprehend." With a final, contemptuous push, he withdrew his blade. Warsmith Krendel, architect of 100 sieges, butcher of worlds, fell to his knees and then collapsed, his massive form crashing to the ground with a final, shuddering clang. Silence fell over the battlefield. The Iron Warriors, their command structure decapitated, their finest warriors and demon engines obliterated by a single being, broke. For the first time in a century, the legionaries of Perturabo knew fear. They began to fall back, a disorganized, terrified rout. Back on the walls of the Hive City, the guardsmen, who had been prepared to die, slowly lowered their They fell to their knees, not in exhaustion, but in reverence. Tears streamed down their soot-stained faces. They were witnessing a miracle. A dark, terrifying miracle, but a miracle nonetheless. Inquisitor Draxus stood beside them, her cybermastiff whining softly at her side. Her own face was pale, her mind struggling to process what she had seen. This was not the work of a space marine, nor an Eversor assassin, nor even a custodian. This was something beyond her experience, beyond the known classifications of the Imperium. As Vader deactivated his blade and turned to walk back towards the bastion, his dark form silhouetted against the fires of the routed army, Kyria Draxus whispered the only words that made any sense to her, the only words that could possibly describe the divine, terrible power she had just witnessed. He is the Emperor's wrath, made flesh. The siege of Mortius Prime was over, but for the galaxy, a new and terrible question had just been asked. What is this dark power, and to whom does it truly owe its allegiance? Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into the grim darkness of the far future, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more epic tales, and let me know in the comments what you thought of Vader's brutal debut in the 41st Millennium. A tremor, not of the earth, but of existence itself. A jagged, crimson wound tears open the sky, a sight that defies all logic, a gateway to a realm of pure, unadulterated madness. This is no natural phenomenon. This is a warp rift, a screaming maw into the Imperium. And from its depths, something ancient and terrible stirs. The air grows thick, heavy with the coppery temps of blood and the electric charge of raw, primal fury. From the bleeding tear in reality, they spill forth an endless tide of crimson skin and twisted muscle. Bloodletters, the foot soldiers of Khorne, the blood god. Each one is a shard of divine rage, their bodies honed for a single purpose: to kill, to maim, to spill blood for their insatiable god. Their hellblades, forged in the very essence of hatred, hum with dark energy, and their cries are a chorus of pure, murderous intent. They are a legion of nightmares made flesh, a tsunami of violence set to wash over this unsuspecting world. They pour across the landscape, a river of red and brass, turning the very soil to a gory mire. For them, this is paradise, a new world to conquer, new skulls to claim for the Skull Throne. The local garrison, brave but hopelessly outmatched, is swept away in moments, their screams swallowed by the demonic war cries. Hope, it seems, has bled out. This world is doomed to become just another blood-soaked altar for the Lord of Skulls. But then, a sound cuts through the cacophony, a single, rhythmic, mechanical breath. It is a sound that has frozen the blood of rebels and Jedi across a galaxy. It is the sound of inevitability. Through the swirling dust and carnage, a figure emerges, a silhouette of absolute black against the hellish red glow of the warp rift. Tall, imposing, draped in a cloak that seems to drink the light around it. His presence is a void, a pocket of cold, disciplined order in a storm of chaotic rage. This is not a soldier. This is not a hero. This is a monument to power, a force of nature unto himself. Darth Vader has arrived. The demons, driven by instinct and bloodlust, pause for a barest fraction of a second. They sense something different in this newcomer. The fury projects as a cold, suffocating thing, so unlike the hot, panicked terror they feast upon. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. The nearest bloodletters, their jagged mouths splitting into grotesque grins, surge forward, eager to claim this intriguing new skull. With a snappies that slices through the air, a blade of pure, incandescent energy ignites. It's a crimson sword, a lightsaber that burns with the color of the very demons it now faces. The world turns red. Vader doesn't wait for their charge. He becomes the aggressor. He moves with a speed that is both terrifyingly fast and unnaturally fluid, a predator unleashed. The first demon lunges hellblade raised high. Vader doesn't parry. He doesn't dodge. He simply advances. His crimson blade meets the demon's neck, and in a flash of cauterized flesh and vaporized ichor, the creature's head is severed, its dying shriek cut short. The body dissolves back into the raw stuff of the warp before it even hits the ground. Another comes from the side, then 2 more from the front. It doesn't matter. Vader is a vortex of destruction. He doesn't fight like a duelist. He fights like a storm. Each movement is a study in brutal efficiency. A thrust, a spin, a sweeping arc. The lightsaber is an extension of his will, a tool of absolute annihilation. The air fills with the smell of ozone and burnt demon flesh. The demons of Khorne are masters of melee, their entire existence dedicated to the art of the kill. They have fought and slaughtered across countless worlds for millennia, but they have never faced anything like this. This is not a warrior fighting for glorious survival. This is a conduit of pure, focused rage, channeled through the dark side of the Force. Vader raises a hand, and a dozen bloodletters are lifted from their feet, their limbs flailing as an unseen force crushes their unnatural bodies into nothingness. They are weapons of Khorne, but the Force is a weapon of the universe itself, and in Vader's grip, it is an instrument of utter domination. He doesn't just fight them, he unmakes them. The battlefield becomes his canvas. He is the artist, and his medium is death. With a gesture, he rips chunks of shattered rock and twisted metal from the ground, hurling them like cannonballs into the demonic horde, each impact obliterating ranks of the Crimson Warriors. He is not just a single combatant, he is a one-man army, a walking artillery piece. The demons' strength is in their numbers, their ferocity, but Vader's power bends the very rules of engagement. He wades deeper into the horde, a black juggernaut in a sea of red. His lightsaber is a continuous blur. Each precise stroke silences 100 shrieks. Each fluid movement bends the chaos of the battlefield to his singular, malevolent will. The demon's hellblades, which can cut through ceramite and steel, glance harmlessly off his lightsaber's blade or are simply pushed aside by his immense strength, augmented by the dark side. For the demons, this is confusing. They thrive on rage, on the raw emotion of battle. And this Dark Lord, he is a wellspring of it. The fury radiating from him is a beacon in the warp, a dark star of hatred, self-loathing, and pain that rivals their own god's domain. Yet, it is not the wild, uncontrolled rage they know. It is cold, disciplined, focused into a razor's edge. They try to feed on it, but it's like trying to drink from a poisoned ocean. It choks them. It burns them from the inside out. He is fighting their fire with a darker, colder flame. Where they are a wildfire, he is the vacuum of deep space. Where they are a screaming roar, he is a suffocating silence. He burned through them like shadows in a flame, an unstoppable force meeting a supposed unstoppable object, and the object was found wanting. The remaining bloodletters, creatures born of courage's absence and pure aggression, feel an emotion that is utterly alien to them. It is not fear as a mortal would know it, but a dawning, instinctual understanding that they are outmatched, that their god's gift of endless rage is insufficient against this. These ting. They see their brethren torn apart by an invisible hand, disintegrated by a blade of angry light, their very essence scattered to the winds. The tide of red begins to falter. For the first time, the charge slows. The Legion of Khorne hesitates. Seeing their momentum broken, Vader presses his advantage. He unleashes the full, terrifying power of the dark side. A wave of pure force, visible as a ripple in the air, erupts from him. It is a telekinetic tsunami that slams into the demonic ranks, shattering their forms and sending hundreds of them reeling back towards the warp rift from which they came. The ground itself groans under the strain of such power. The few survivors who are not torn apart by the blast or their own faltering connection to the material realm scramble back, a disorderly, panicked retreat into the screaming maw of the portal. The glorious charge for blood and skulls has turned into a desperate flight from a singular, unstoppable entity. As the last of the demons vanishes back into the crimson tear in the sky begins to shudder and shrink. Its connection severed, the hellish red light fades, leaving only the twilight of a world scarred and broken, but saved. Silence descends upon the battlefield, broken only by the wind whistling over the scorched earth and the steady, rhythmic sound of that mechanical breathing. Vader stands alone amidst the devastation, his red blade still humming, casting a sinister glow on his black armor. He has not saved this world out of heroism or compassion. He has defended it because it is his Emperor's territory, and he will not suffer the trespass of another dark power. He is the ultimate enforcer, the final arbiter of his master's will. The few mortal soldiers who survived the initial onslaught, who witnessed this impossible battle from their hiding places, look upon him not with gratitude, but with sheer, primal terror. They do not see a savior. They see something far more terrifying than the demons he just vanquished. They see a being of immense power and absolute ruthlessness. In their whispered, terrified accounts of the day, a new name is born for the Dark Lord of the Sith. A name that would echo in the nightmares of those who heard it. They call him the Black Angel of Death. Vader deactivates his lightsaber, the blade retracting with a final hiss. The battlefield is quiet. His work here is done. He turns, his cloak sweeping behind him like the wings of some great, dark bird, and walks away from the carnage, leaving behind a legacy of fear and a legend etched in the blood of demons. Thanks for tuning in for this epic crossover story. It's always fun to imagine these what-if scenarios between massive universes. In the grim darkness of the 41st Millennium, where faith and fear reign supreme, a new anomaly has emerged, a being of immense power that defies all known classification. They call him Darth Vader, a warrior clad in obsidian armor, whose abilities ripple through the very fabric of reality. The best minds of the Imperium, from the logic-driven tech priests of Mars to the sanctioned psychers of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, have been tasked with a singular, terrifying purpose: to understand the nature of his power. The initial reports were chaotic, filled with hushed whispers and fragmented data. Psychers, those souls cursed and blessed with the ability to touch the warp, were the first to attempt a direct assessment. They reached out with their minds, seeking to plumb the depths of this new entity, to find the source of his otherworldly might. What they found was not a presence, but an absence, a void, a wound in the Imperium so profound that it shattered their sanity. One after another, they fell. Seasoned Primorus Psychers, who had stared into the eyes of greater demons and held the line against psychic maelstroms, were reduced to babbling, catatonic wrecks. Their minds, instead of sensing a soul, were met with a suffocating, crushing pressure. A psychic gravity well that consumed their own essence. Some clawed out their own eyes, screaming of a blinding, dark light. Others simply collapsed, their minds wiped clean, leaving behind empty shells. The consensus was horrifying. To sense Vader through the warp was to invite madness and oblivion. This led to a chilling hypothesis. Could he be a pariah? A psychic null? These soulless individuals are anathema to the warp, their very presence snuffing out psychic phenomena. But this didn't fit. A pariah is a psychic black hole, a passive void. Vader was anything but passive. He wielded his power with precision and devastating intent. He could choke a man from across a room, deflect solid projectiles with an unseen barrier, and move with a speed and prescience that bordered on supernatural. This was not the absence of power. This was power of a different kind, a different source. The Adeptus Mechanicus, ever eager to dissect and codify the universe, brought their own unique perspective. They approached Vader not as a psychic being, but as a marvel of arcane technology. Their initial scans revealed a life support system of incredible sophistication, a fusion of man and machine that far surpassed their own augmetic work. But the true mystery lay beyond the plasteel and wiring. They deployed their most sensitive Auspex arrays. Cogitators worry as they tried to measure the energy he manipulated. The readings were paradoxical. There were no discernible emissions of warp energy, no fluctuations in the Geller field, no telltale signs of demonic pacts or sorcerous rituals. Yet, the physical effects were undeniable. Objects moved without physical contact. Terrestrial bulkheads buckled under invisible force, and his blade, a searing beam of crimson energy, cut through adamantium as if it were parchment. The tech priests, in their rigid, logical way, began to formulate a new classification. They observed the way his power seemed to flow, not just asterisk from asterisk him, but through him, guided by his will and his connection to his advanced cybernetics. They theorized that his suit was not just a life support system, but a complex focusing conduit. A new term was entered into the Martian Dotalooms, technothurgic pariah, a being who, through some fusion of unique biology and unparalleled technology, could manipulate the material universe without drawing upon the treacherous tides of the image. It was a paradox, a walking contradiction of their most fundamental beliefs about the cosmos. He was a psyker who was not a psyker, a miracle of the machine that was also a terrifying force of nature, while the greatest institutions of the Imperium scrambled for answers, tying themselves in knots of dogma and theory. Vader himself remained an enigma. He was indifferent to their studies, their prodding, and their fear. He stood as a silent monolith, observing their frantic efforts with an almost detached amusement. When a high-ranking Magos biologus, trembling but determined, finally dared to ask him directly to name the source of his impossible power, Vader's reply was simple, delivered through the chilling rasp of his voice. He gave it a name that meant nothing to them, yet everything to him. A name that spoke not of gods or demons, of technology or mutation, but of a universal, binding energy. He called it the Force. This answer solved nothing and complicated everything. What was this Force? Was it some undiscovered law of physics? A Xenos religion? A new, subtle form of heresy? For the Imperium, a new fear began to dawn. It was not the fear of a powerful individual, for the galaxy has many of those. It was the fear of the unknown. If one such being existed, could there be others? Could this force be learned, harnessed, or even weaponized on a galactic scale? The implications were staggering. The study of Darth Vader became the most classified and dangerous project in the entire Imperium. The psychers who survived were locked away, their warnings of a dark side dismissed as the ravings of broken minds. The Mechanicus continued their work in secret, desperate to replicate the effect, to create their own technothurgic warriors, blind to the spiritual corrosion that seemed to emanate from their subject. And through it all, Vader waited. He let them study, let them theorize. He knew they could never understand. They looked for the source of his power in the warp, in his suit, in his cells. But they were looking in the wrong places. They couldn't see that his power was born of pain, shaped by los, and fueled by a rage so pure it had become a law of nature unto itself. They saw a monster, a machine, a psychic blank. They did not see the broken man inside, the fallen hero who had mastered his own agony and turned it into a weapon to shatter worlds. They could never understand the Force, because to understand it, they would have to understand him, and to understand him was a fate worse than any their grim galaxy had yet devised. This exploration of how the 40K universe might interpret the Force is just a taste of the fascinating crossovers we can imagine. In the sprawling, star-strewn expanse of the galaxy, countless souls offer their prayers to one being, one golden light against the encroaching darkness. There is only one Emperor, and he is not pleased. Deep within the heart of Terra, nestled in the Sanctum Imperialis, a tremor runs through the very fabric of the warp. It is not a physical quake, but something far more profound, a psychic shockwave that ripples out from the Golden Throne itself. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Master of Mankind stirs. Not a true awakening, not the glorious return the Imperium has prayed for, but a flicker of consciousness, a surge of ancient, immeasurable power. Aesir Bants, the cloistered tech priests, and the tireless functionaries of the Adeptus Terra fail at first. A sudden, chilling drop in temperature, a prickling sensation on the back of the neck, an inexplicable sense of dread, as if a storm is gathering not in the sky, but in their very souls. They look to their augurs and cogitators, but the machines offer no explanation. The disturbance is not of the material realm. It is a spiritual malaise, a psychic echo of a power both familiar and terrifyingly alien. The feeling is of a shadow, a mirror image, a reflection of the Emperor's own righteous fury, his absolute will, but twisted, colder, and steeped in a palpable sorrow. It's as if his own wrath has been given form and walks free among the stars, a false emperor, casting a long, dark shadow over his domain. This psychic emanation, this phantom presence, has a name whispered in another reality. a name that carries the weight of fallen stars and broken oaths. Vader. Unbeknownst to the denizens of the 41st Millennium, the Dark Lord of the Sith has arrived, and his psychic signature, a beacon of focused rage and control over a mystical energy, has reached all the way to the throne world. The Emperor, in his suspended state, perceives this new power not as a simple psyker, but as an intolerable blasphemy, a perversion of authority, an entity that commands with a force akin to his own, yet utterly devoid of his golden light. For the Adeptus Custodes, the 10,000, the Emperor's personal guardians, this psychic tremor is a clarion call. They are extensions of the master of mankind's will, and they feel his displeasure as their own. In the gilded halls of the Imperial Palace, their auramite armor seems to gleam with a sharper, more dangerous light. Their vigilance, already absolute, intensifies. Captain General Trajan Valoris, a being who has stood watch for centuries, feels the psychic jolt as a physical blow. He convenes his tribunes in the Tower of Hegemon. The air crackles with latent power. There are no frantic alarms, no panicked orders. There is only a cold, silent certainty. A threat has emerged. Not a fleet of greenskins, not a tendril of a hive fleet, not even the machinations of the archenemy. This is something else. Something singular, an affront to the very concept of the Emperor's divinity. A presence has made itself known. Valoris's voice, resonant and calm, fills the chamber. It mimics the Master's authority. It radiates a power that perverts his holy light. The Lord of Terra is disturbed. The word hangs in the air, heavier than any planet. The Emperor is never simply disturbed. His is a state of eternal, silent sacrifice. For him to react means the threat is existential. Our sources across the Segmentum Solar report whispers. A shield captain reports, his voice filtered through his helmet's vox grill. A figure in black armor, a blade of red light that cuts through ceramite, as if it were parchment. A will that can crush a man's throat from 100 paces. The descriptions are fragmented, coming from terrified Astra Militarum garrisons and bewildered administratum scribes on distant worlds. They speak of a conqueror, a single being who commands not through strategy or logistics, but through sheer, terrifying presence. They call him a warlord, a tyrant, a dark messiah. The Custodes listen, their impassive golden masks betraying no emotion. But within, a cold fire is stoked. This false emperor, this Vader, is more than a rebel. He is a heresy made manifest. He's a walking blasphemy. His very existence is an insult to the 10,000 years of sacrifice, to the trillions of lives given in the Emperor's name. The order is given. It is not a request for an army, nor a mobilization of the Imperial Guard. This is a task for the best of the best. A shield host is assembled, veterans of countless wars, warriors who have faced down greater demons and alien gods. Their mission is not one of conquest, but of sanctification. They are not merely going to defeat an enemy, they are going to expunge a stain. Aboard their glorious golden strike cruises, the Custodes prepare for departure. Their guardian spears are calibrated. Their sentinel blades are honed to a monomolecular edge. Each warrior is a masterpiece of genetic engineering and arcane technology, an artist of war whose only canvas is the battlefield. They do not speak of fear or doubt. They speak only of duty. The Emperor's shadow has fallen upon the galaxy, and they are the light that will drive it out. As their ships cleave through the Imperium, a silent vow passes between them. They will find this Vader. They will face this mirror image of their master's wrath. They will bring him to Terra, to kneel before the golden throne and face the silent judgment of the one true Emperor of mankind. The hunt has begun. The Emperor's personal fury is now unleashed. Clad in auramite, and driven by 10 millennia of unwavering loyalty, the galaxy will tremble, not from the power of this dark shadow, but from the righteous anger of the Guardians who serve the light. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving headfirst into a crossover battle of epic proportions, a clash that shakes the very foundations of two galaxies. Imagine this, the stoic, golden guardians of the Emperor of Mankind, the Adeptus standing against the most feared Sith Lord in galactic history, Darth Vader. The setting, the desolate, war-torn world of Mortius Prime. The stage is set for a duel that pits unwavering faith against raw, untamed fury. Our story begins under the sickly glow of a dying sun. The air on Mortius Prime is thick with the stench of ozone and death, a fitting backdrop for the confrontation to come. A contingent of Adeptus Custodes, their aura might, armor gleaming like a defiant promise against the gloom, stands resolute. They are the 10,000, the Emperor's personal guard, each a demigod of war crafted to be the ultimate protector. They move with a preternatural grace, their guardian spears held at the ready. They haven't come for conquest. They've come because their arcane senses detected a psychic disturbance, a wound in reality so profound it resonated across the void of power that felt both familiar and heretical. Across the scarred battlefield, a lone figure emerges from the swirling dust. Tall, cloaked in impenetrable black, his presence is a vortex of cold and menace. The rhythmic, mechanical breathing is the only sound that breaks the tense silence. It is Darth Vader, the Dark Lord of the Sith, his crimson lightsaber humming with contained rage. He, too, was drawn to Mortius Prime. Sensing a nexus of power that rivaled his own golden light that was an affront to the dark side he commanded. He sees the Custodes not as warriors, but as obstacles, gilded idols waiting to be shattered. There is no formal challenge, no exchange of words. The battle begins with an unspoken declaration of war. A Custodes, shield captain, his crested helmet, a mark of authority, steps forward. Four. Clo. Laissez-faire, he bellows, his voice amplified by his helm's voximeter, a sound like cracking stone. He and his brothers charge, a wave of disciplined gold against a pillar of obsidian black. Their movements are a blur of perfectly executed combat drills. Each step, each thrust of their guardian spears, honed over millennia of relentless training. Vader meets their charge, not with movement, but with the Force. With a contemptuous gesture, he unleashes a powerful telekinetic wave. The very ground rips apart. Chunks of rock and debris the size of land speeders are hurled at the advancing Custodes, but they are not ordinary soldiers. Their powered armor absorbs the impacts that would pulverize lesser beings, and their storm shields, crackling with energy, deflect the deadly projectiles. Press on their faith, an impenetrable shield against his power. The first custodian reaches Vader. His guardian spear, a masterwork of technology combining a power blade and a bolter, thrusts toward the Sith Lord's chest. Vader's crimson blade flashes to life, intercepting the blow with a shower of sparks. The air crackles with the energy of their clash. But as Vader parries the spear, he doesn't account for the integrated bolt. The custodian fires, sending a volley of mass-reactive shells point-blank. This is where the true nature of this conflict becomes clear. Vader, with his precognitive abilities, anticipates the shots. He twists, the bolts exploding harmlessly against the rockcrete behind him. He responds with a brutal force push, sending the custodian flying backward, his armor groaning under the immense pressure. Vader is fighting warriors, but his true enemy is the psychic might that fuels them, a power that feels alien yet strangely familiar. The Custodes are not deterred. They have faced demons and Xenos horrors that would break the minds of mortals. They adapt their strategy instantly. They know this isn't a mere swordsman. This is a psyker of immense power. They form a circle around Vader, their spears creating a cage of shimmering energy. They aren't just attacking his body. They're pressing in on him with the weight of their collective will, a golden bulwark of psychic energy derived from their unwavering loyalty to the Emperor. This is the core of the duel. Faith versus fear. Vader's power stems from passion, from anger and tread a raging storm that seeks to dominate and destroy. The Custodes' strength is born from absolute devotion, a calm, unyielding certainty in the divinity of the Emperor. It's a focused, radiant light. As Vader lashes out with the dark side, he feels his power met by a wall of golden energy, a psychic choir that whispers of loyalty and sacrifice, a concept anathema to the Sith. He extends a hand, attempting to crush the throat of a nearby custodian with the Force. But the warrior stands firm. The aura might gorge it is one thing, but the custodian's own psychic fortitude, bolstered by the Emperor's aegis, resists the pressure. Sith, Lordess attack, which has choked the life out of countless rebels and generals, merely causes the Golden Warrior to stumble. The custodian answers by leveling his spear and firing another controlled burst from his bolter, forcing Vader to deflect again. The fight becomes a brutal, swirling vortex. Gold armor clashes against a black cloak, the hum of a lightsaber duels, with the crackle of power weapons and the roar of bolter fire. The very planet seems to protest. The ground shakes, not just from the physical impacts, but from the sheer psychic pressure being exerted. The Force, a cosmic energy field, is colliding with the raw, focused power of the warp, channeled through the Emperor's will and embodied by his guards. It's a metaphysical earthquake, tearing at the fabric of Mortia's prime. Fissures split the planet's crust, spewing magma into the dust-choked air. Vader realizes he cannot win through attrition. These warriors are tireless, their resolve unbreakable. Each one he strikes down is replaced by another, their discipline flawless. He changes tactics, tapping deeper into the dark side. He reaches out, not just to attack them, but to assail their minds. He projects visions of failure, of the Emperor's death, of a decaying Imperium ruled by incompetence and lies. He shows them the futility of their long vigil. For a moment, the golden line wavers. A custodian hesitates, his spear tip dropping an inch. But then, the shield captain's voice rings out again. His lies are as hollow as his soul. The master of mankind is eternal. The doubt is purged, replaced by a renewed, incandescent fury. Their faith is not a switch that can be turned off. It is the very core of their being. The psychic assault has failed. In fact, it has made them stronger, their righteous indignation fueling their counterattack. Vader is genuinely taken aback. He has broken Jedi masters with such tactics. But these beings, they are different. Their minds are fortresses, their loyalty a weapon more potent than any blade. He feels the immense psychic presence of their distant master, a blinding sun of power that makes even his own connection to the dark side feel like a flickering candle in a hurricane. It is a power he recognizes with a primal sense of dread, a power not unlike that of his own Emperor, Palpatine, but purer, older, and vastly more potent. Realizing this, the shield captain makes a decision. This conflict is unwinnable in a conventional sense. To continue would be to waste precious lives against an opponent whose power is simply too different, too alien to overcome decisively without unacceptable losses. Their mission was to investigate the disturbance, not to die in a pointless battle on a barren rock. He gives the signal to withdraw. Simultaneously, Vader comes to the same conclusion. He cannot break these golden sentinels, and the psychic backlash from their master is a threat he cannot ignore. To press the attack would be to risk everything for a victory that brings no strategic advantage. He needs to report this to his Emperor. This golden power is a new, terrifying player on the galactic stage. With a final, explosive clash of energy, both sides disengage. The Custodes pull back with the same perfect discipline with which they attacked, retreating into the shadows without turning their backs. Vader stands alone on the shattered battlefield, his mechanical breathing heavy in the sudden silence. The dust begins to settle, revealing a landscape utterly transformed by their duel. Who won? In truth, no one. And everyone. The Custodes proved that their faith was a shield against even the darkest powers of another universe. Vader demonstrated that his command of the Force could hold at bay demigods of war. Both sides withdrew, not in defeat, but in a state of grim understanding. They had each gazed into the heart of a new and terrible power, and they were left with more questions than answers. The duel on Mortia's Prime was over, but the echoes of this cataclysmic encounter would ripple across 2 galaxies, heralding a war of gods and monsters yet to come. What did you think of this epic showdown? Who do you think would have the ultimate edge? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Video begins, perhaps with imagery of Vader's meditation chamber, shifting into chaotic, impossible geometries. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're re-diving into a truly epic crossover confrontation, a moment where the dark might of the Sith meets the insidious power of the warp. We're exploring what happens when Darth Vader, the Dark Lord of the Sith, comes face to face with the architect of fate himself, the Chaos God Zine. Imagine Vader in his meditation chamber, a sanctum designed for focus and control, a place where he communes with the dark side of the Force. It's a realm he commands, a familiar landscape of power and pain. But on this day, something is different. The Force, usually a predictable river of energy he can bend to his will, feels tainted. A new current flows within it, something alien, something ancient, and impossibly vast. It's the whisper of chaos. In the silent darkness of his mind, a voice echoes, not of the Sith spirits he knows, but of something far older and more cunning. Anakin Skywalker. It lilts, a symphony of 1 billion possibilities, a chorus of lies and truths interwoven. Or do you prefer Vader? Names are but labels, and you have worn so many. This is Tzinch, the changer of ways, and he has found a new, fascinating piece to place upon the grand cosmic chess. Vader's immediate reaction is pure, undiluted fury. His mental sanctum becomes a fortress. You are not welcome here, spirit. His thoughts roar, a psychic blast meant to annihilate any intruder. But this is no mere ghost. Tzinch laughs, a sound that shatters logic and reason. Welcome, my dear Lord Vader. I am everywhere and nowhere. I am the change you desperately seek, and the stagnation you fear. The Chaos God begins his temptation, a masterfully crafted assault on Vader's deepest desires. Visions flood Vader's mind, not crude illusions, but tangible futures, each one a perfect, shimmering jewel of possibility. He sees himself standing over a defeated Palpatine. The Empire, truly his. He sees Padme alive, at his side, her love not a memory but a reality. The vision shifts, showing him a new body, whole and unscarred, free from the prison of his life support suit. He feels the sun on his skin, breathes air without a respirator, his full power in the Force unleashed, unchained by his broken form. This can all be yours. Tzinch whispers, his voice dripping with seductive promise. The dark side you serve is a puddle next to the ocean of the warp. Palpatine offers you scraps from his table. I offer you the entire galaxy, a throne not just of one empire, but of reality itself. Immortality, not as a machine, but as a god. For any other being, this would be the breaking point. The sheer scale of the power on display, the perfect tailoring of the temptation, would be irresistible. But this is Darth Vader. His will has been forged in the fires of Mustafar, tempered by decades of self-loathing, betrayal, and relentless discipline. He has built a fortress around his heart, and its walls are made of pure, unyielding resolve. Lies, Vader projects, his will a blade of cold, hard reality, cutting through the fantasy. Your promises are chains painted to look like crowns. I have a master. The admission is bitter, but it is also his shield. His loyalty to the Sith, his servitude to Palpatine, as hateful as it may be, is a known quantity. It is an anchor in a sea of madness. Tzinch represents the unknown, the chaotic, the uncontrollable. Tzinch seems almost delighted by the resistance. A master, a decrepit old man who fears you. He uses you, Vader. He keeps you broken because he knows your true potential would eclipse him. I would not. I would see you ascend. I would grant you the knowledge to not only rule but to reshape creation itself. Think of it. You could rewrite the past. You could undo your mistakes. You could save her. Truly save her this time. The mention of Padme is a targeted strike, a poisoned dagger, aimed at the one true crack in Vader's armor. He stumbles in his own mind. The image of her, smiling, alive, is almost too much to bear. The pain is exquisite, a familiar agony that has fueled his rage for years. But it is also the source of his greatest strength. That pain is his. It belongs to him. He will not allow this entity to use it against him. She is gone. Vader's thought is a final, cold statement of fact. A door slammed shut. Your power offers nothing but illusion. With a monumental effort of will, he marshals the dark side of the Force, not as a weapon, but as a shield, a bastion of pure, ordered malice. He focuses on his hatred for his master, his hatred for Obi-Wan, his hatred for himself. He weaponizes his own suffering, turning it into a bulwark against the kaleidoscopic madness of the warp. The visions shatter. The voice of Tzinch recedes, not in defeat, but in amusement. The laughter echoes one last time. An iron will indeed. A fortress. But every fortress has a key, every wall a flaw. We will speak again, Lord Vader. The great game has only just begun, and you are now a player, whether you wish it or not. And then, silence. Vader is alone again in his meditation chamber. The air is still. The Force feels normal, clean. But something has fundamentally changed. For the first time, Vader felt the universe stare back at him. He had looked into the abyss of the Force, and this time, the abyss had a name. It had an intelligence. It recognized him as a rival, a piece of immense value. He had resisted Tzinch, yes, but in doing so, he had put himself on the radar of the Chaos Gods. The whisper of chaos had faded, but its echo would remain forever. The Dark Gods never ignored a rival. What a chilling thought. Vader's strength is also what makes him a target for powers beyond his comprehension. He has proven he is strong enough to be a threat, or a prize, to the gods of the warp. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a tale of ambition, heresy, and the clash of two universes. This is Chapter 10. The Pact of Steel and Flesh. Imagine, if you will, the dark, oily workshops of a Mechanicus forge world. The air is thick with incense, ozone, and the constant thrum of ancient machinery. Here, amidst the chanting tech priests and worry servitors, a truly heretical idea takes root. A delegation of magi, their optical sensors gleaming with forbidden curiosity, have studied the being known as Darth Vader. They see in him not a man, not a Sith Lord, but the pinnacle of a union they have long sought, a weapon that breathes, a man who became a machine. To them, Vader's life support suit is more than just armor. It's a sacred text written in plasteel and circuitry. They see his cybernetic limbs not as replacements, but as enhancements, a perfect synthesis of biological imperfection and mechanical perfection. In their dogmatic view, he represents the next logical step in humanity's evolution, a living embodiment of the Omnissiah's will made manifest. They believe that by replicating his technology, they can unlock secrets that have eluded them for millennia. They dream of creating legions of warriors just like him, an army of steel-clad demigods to serve the machine god. Driven by this dangerous obsession, a high-ranking Magos, biologies, one who has long skirted the edges of tech heresy, formally approaches the Sith Lord. He doesn't see the man within the machine. He sees only the superior design. With a series of clicks and binary cant, the Magos proposes an alliance. Lord Vader. He intones his voice, a synthesized rasp. Your form is the ultimate sermon. Your existence, a testament to the glorious fusion of steel and flesh. We of the Adeptus Mechanicus wish to ... learn from you, to replicate the divine engineering that sustains you. The proposal is audacious. They want to study his armor, analyze his cybernetics, and reverse engineer the complex systems that keep him alive. They offer him access to their most advanced archaeotech, promising upgrades that could enhance his connection to the Force and perhaps even lessen his constant pain. They speak of a pact, a mutual exchange of knowledge that would benefit both the Empire and the Cult of Mars. Vader stands silent in the heart of the forge, a black hole of stillness amidst the cacophony. The air grows cold around him. The Force swirls with the tech priests, avarice and ambition. He can feel their thoughts, their desire to dissect him, to reduce him to a mere blueprint. He understands their fascination, but he also senses the rot at its core. Yet, their offer contains a sliver of utility. An army of augmented soldiers, loyal to him, could be a powerful tool. He considers the possibilities, the strategic advantage such a force would grant him. "You may proceed," Vader's voice modulator booms, the sound cutting through the industrial noise like a shard of ice. "You will be granted access to my but note this, you are to replicate the technology, not the man. Your ambition will be tolerated, but not your folly." A wave of excitement, a cacophony of binary screeches, ripples through the assembled magi. They believe they have won. They have secured the cooperation of their living idol. They immediately set to work, their forges roaring to life with renewed purpose. Vast data looms process the complex schematics of Vader's suit, while biofurnaces prepare the organic components for integration. They see this as their magnum opus, the creation of a new kind of soldier, a techno-warrior that will redefine the very nature of warfare in the galaxy. The project, codenamed Project Protus, advances with terrifying speed. The tech priests work with a fervor bordering on religious mania. They build a suit, a shell of black armor that mirrors Vader's own, yet it is subtly different. It is bulkier, more ornate, covered in the cogs and skulls that mark the works of the Mechanicus. They don't just want to copy, they want to improve. They add secondary power sources, redundant systems, and even sanctified machine spirits to govern the armor's functions. But as the days turn into weeks, a darker ambition reveals itself. The Magi are not content with mere machinery. They have studied the warp, the esoteric energies that the Imperium both fears and exploits. They believe that the Force, this power Vader wields, is simply another facet of the and in their hubris, they decide that a machine spirit is not enough to animate their creation. They need something more potent, something with a will of its own. In the deepest, most shielded chambers of the forge, they begin a new, unsanctioned phase of the project. They perform rituals that would make an inquisitor blanch. They chant forbidden litanies and inscribe blasphemous runes onto the inner plates of the armor. Their goal is no longer simply to create a superior soldier. They seek to bind a denizen of the warp, a demon, into the machine's core. They believe they can harness its raw power, control it, and use it to animate their armored shell, creating a being of unimaginable strength. They see it as the ultimate synthesis. The body of a machine, the mind of a demon, guided by the logic of the Mechanicus. Vader, of course, is watching. He senses the shift. The forge, once a place of mere industrial ambition, now reeks of something far more ancient and corrupt. The Force screams a warning, a discordant symphony of wrongness. The air itself feels thin and charged with a malevolent energy that has nothing to do with technology. He can feel the tendrils of the warp wrapping around the project, twisting it into something monstrous. The tech priests, in their blind pursuit of knowledge, have opened a door they cannot possibly hope to close. He returns to the forge unannounced. The scene that greets him confirms his worst fears. The prototype armor stands on a dais, chains of crackling energy holding it in place. Around it, the senior Magi are deep in a ritual. The air is thick with the scent of burnt circuits and something else, something foul and otherworldly. A swirling vortex of unnatural energy is coalescing above the armor. A wound in reality. They are attempting to pull a demon through and imprison it within the plasteel shell. The lead Magos turns, his optical sensors widening in surprise, and then defiance. "Lord Vader, you are witnessing the birth of a god, the perfect fusion of technology and raw cosmic power." Vader says nothing. He simply raises a hand. The worry of machinery begins to falter. Metal groans and twists. The complex ritual apparatus, the culmination of weeks of work, crumples as if made of paper. Pipes burst, spraying superheated coolant across the chamber. The tech priests cry out in alarm, their binary prayers turning to static field screams. A vortex of warp energy wavers. The demon, half-summoned, shrieks in frustration, its ethereal form lashing out before being sucked back into the Imperium. Vader walks forward, his every step a death knell. The surviving Magi back away, their arrogance replaced by primal terror. They finally see the man, the monster they have provoked. "You have mistaken my tolerance for approval." Vader's voice is chillingly calm, a stark contrast to the chaos erupting around him. He reaches out with the Force, and the prototype armor, their masterpiece, is lifted into the air. With a clench of his fist, it implodes, collapsing into a ball of mangled metal and shattered circuitry. He turns his attention to the Magi cowering before him. They raise their weapons, arc pistols, phosphor blasters, but it is a futile gesture. Their own servo arms and mechadendrites turn against them, crushing their augmented bodies. The forge itself becomes his weapon. Molten metal erupts from the crucibles, not in a chaotic flood, but in precise, targeted streams that engulf the heretical priests. Their screams are mercifully short. Within minutes, silence falls. Vader stands alone in the heart of the ruined forge, surrounded by fire and the smoldering remains of twisted technology and broken bodies. The stench of the warp has been purged, replaced by the clean, acrid smell of burning metal. He looks upon the destruction he has wrought, a necessary cleansing. His final declaration echoes through the desolate chamber, a lesson etched in fire and death for any who would dare to follow this path. Technology is a tool, he states to the ghosts and the dying embers. It is meant to serve life, not defile it. With that, he turns and departs, leaving the forge to burn, a monumental tomb for a pact of steel and flesh that was doomed from its very inception. We've journeyed with Vader across blasted landscapes and through the halls of Imperial power. We've seen him forge an uneasy alliance with the Imperium of Man, his formidable presence a bulwark against the unending tide of Xenos and heretics. He has become a dark legend, a specter of death, whispered about by guardsmen and feared by their foes. But the galaxy is a vast and hateful place, and for every victory, a price must be paid. The shadows he has cast have not gone unnoticed, and from the roiling heart of the warp, a malevolent gaze is fixed upon him. The ruinous powers do not forgive. They do not forget. And now, their retribution is at hand. The sky of a mightiest prime, a world Vader had bled to defend, tore open without warning. The air itself screamed, shredding into a vortex of impossible colors and raw, psychic energy. This was no mere tear in reality. It was a wound, a gateway, to a realm of pure madness. The warp had come to mightiest prime. From this nascent chaos gate spewed forth a tide of unimaginable horrors. The ground shuddered as legions of demons, twisted abominations of flesh and spite, poured onto the sacred soil of the Imperium. They were a living tide of nightmares, chittering, howling, and slithering forward with an insatiable hunger for mortal souls. This was not a random incursion. This was a statement, a declaration of war from the gods of chaos themselves, who felt the sting of Vader's previous victories and now demanded vengeance. Leading this unholy crusade were two of the most infamous traitor legions. From the gate marched the Iron Warriors, their ceramite armor, the color of scorched metal, adorned with grim trophies and the sigils of their dark pacts. Masters of siegecraft and attrition, they were the hammer of chaos, their every step a methodical advance of cold, calculated destruction. Their heavy bolters roared, chewing through the hastily erected defenses of the Astromil. Alongside them, chanting blasphemous litanies that curdled the air, advanced the word-bearers, clad in crimson armor scrawled with profane scripture. They were the zealous heart of the rebellion. Each word-bearer was a dark apostle, a preacher of damnation, and their very presence was a poison that eroded faith and courage. They were not just here to conquer. They were here to convert, to corrupt, and to drag mightiest prime screaming into the embrace of the warp. The combined might of these two legions, backed by an endless sea of demons, was a force that could break entire star systems. The Imperial Guard, though caught by surprise, responded with the grim determination for which they are renowned. Lasgon volleys, like searing rain, crisscrossed the battlefield, finding purchase on demonic flesh and chipping at traitorous power armor. The thunderous roar of lemon rust battle tanks echoed across the plains as they spat incandescent death into the advancing horde. But it was a desperate fight. For every demon banished, 2 more seemed to take its place. For every traitor legionary felled, a dozen more advanced over his corpse. The god lines were bending, threatening to snap under the sheer, overwhelming pressure of the chaos assault. Morale began to fray as the psychic taint of the warp seeped into the minds of the brave soldiers, whispering promises of power and visions of their own gruesome deaths. They were fighting not just an army, but an idea of utter despair. Then he arrived. A silhouette of obsidian against the hellish glow of the warp rift. Darth Vader descended upon the battlefield like a vengeful god from a forgotten, darker mythology. His black armor seemed to drink the light, a void in the riot of chaotic color. The rhythmic mechanical hiss of his respirator cut through the din of battle, a sound that promised methodical, merciless annihilation. He did not issue a grand proclamation or a rallying cry. He simply ignited his lightsaber, his crimson blade a stark, bloody line drawn in the corrupted air. Without a word, he plunged into the thickest part of the fighting, a one-man vortex of destruction. The Force, a power alien and potent in this reality, swirled around him like a storm. He was no longer just a commander. He was the Emperor's wrath made manifest, a singular point of focus in the maelstrom of war. The champions of chaos, arrogant in their dark blessings, saw this lone figure as a worthy challenge. A hulking iron warrior, his armor bristling with augmented weaponry and demonic insignia, charged Vader, his power axe humming with malevolent energy. He swung the massive weapon in an arc meant to cleave Vader in 2. But the Dark Lord was a blur of motion. He sidestepped the clumsy blow with preternatural grace, his lightsaber tracing a scarlet arc. The blade met the traitor's neck, slicing through ceramite, flesh, and bone with contemptuous ease. The champion's head, its face frozen in a mask of shocked disbelief, tumbled to the ground. Before the hulking body could even fall, Vader was already moving, his attention on the next threat, a word-bearer apostle, his voice booming with blasphemous power as he incanted a dark ritual, found his words choked off. A crush of invisible force seized him, lifting him from the ground, his gorget crumpling as Vader closed his fist. With a sickening crack, the apostle's neck snapped, and his dark sermon was silenced forever. Vader was a whirlwind of death. He carved a path through the demonic host, his lightsaber, a blur of crimson light that left trails of cauterized flesh and molten armor in its wake. He became the anchor point for the beleaguered Imperial Guard, where he fought till he knelt. Inspired by this stock champion, the Godsmen redoubled their efforts. They rallied around him, their fear replaced by a grim awe. They saw not a hero, but a weapon, and they would follow that weapon to victory or damnation. But Vader's true objective was not the slaughter of foot soldiers. His gaze was fixed on the source of the corruption, the pulsating, screaming wound in reality of the warp rift. He knew that as long as it remained open, the tide of chaos was endless. The battle could not be won through attrition. It had to be won by severing the connection to the Imperium itself. Gathering the force around him, Vader began to push his way toward the rift. The very air around the portal was thick with raw psychic energy, a toxic storm that would have flayed the mind of any normal psyker. He waded through this storm, the chaotic energies clawing at him, at his suit, at his very soul. The demons guarding the portal were the most powerful, great beasts of nightmare and rage, but they fell before him like wheat before a scythe. He reached the epicenter, a vortex of pure chaos that threatened to swallow him whole. Standing before the howling maw of hell, Vader raised his hands. He reached out, not with his hands, but with his will. He plunged his consciousness into the tempest, grappling with the very essence of the warp. It was a battle of pure will, a contest between the focused, disciplined darkness of the Sith Lord and the untamed, boundless madness of chaos. The strain was immense, unlike anything he had ever experienced. The warp fought back, not just with psychic force, but with insidious whispers. It probed his mind, seeking his weaknesses. It showed him visions of Padme, her face twisted in accusation. It whispered of the son he had tormented, the power he could have had, the failures that haunted his every waking moment. It promised him the restoration of his body, the end of his pain, all in exchange for his allegiance. But Vader was no stranger to temptation. He had been forged in the fires of the dark side, his will tempered by decades of pain and rage. He rejected the whispers, focusing his hatred, his loss, and his indomitable will into a singular point of pressure against the rift. A titanic, invisible struggle raged on a plane no mortal could perceive. Slowly, agonizingly, the edges of the warp rift began to shrink. The screaming of the portal intensified, then began to fade, as if a great throat were being squeezed shut. With a final, deafening roar that shook the entire planet, the warp rift imploded, sealing itself shut with a flash of violent, purple light. Silence, sudden and absolute, fell across the battlefield. The demonic legions, their connection to the warp severed, dissolved into smoke and ichor, their brief existence in reality extinguished. The surviving traitor Marines, their divine support gone, and their morale shattered, broke and fled. Mightiest Prime was saved. But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Vader stood alone in the center of the Noscard plain, his breathing ragged and labored. The energies of the warp, even as he had forced them back, had taken their toll. His advanced cybernetics, the very systems that kept him alive, sparked and hissed, corrupted by the raw chaos they had been exposed to. Black smoke trickled from the joints of his armor. The control panel on his chest flickered erratically, its lights dying one by one. A deep, searing pain, far worse than his usual constant agony, lanced through his ravaged body. He had stared into the abyss and forced it to blink, but the abyss had stared back, leaving its venomous mark upon him. He sank to one knee, his strength failing, the crimson blade of his lightsaber extinguishing into the sudden, area twilight. The Dark Lord had won, but he was grievously wounded, more vulnerable than he had been in decades. And in the grim darkness of the 41st Millennium, vulnerability is a death sentence. Across the void, beyond the familiar stars of a galaxy far, far away, and through the churning, chaotic energies of the Imperium, a connection is forged. It is a link of unimaginable power, a psychic resonance that bridges to realities. On one end sits a broken man, more machine than flesh, encased in black armor that is both his prison and his life support. Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, kneels not before his own emperor, but is instead pulled into the psychic presence of another. On the other end of this impossible connection, enthroned in gold and sustained by arcane technology, sits the master of mankind, the Emperor of Terra. His mind, a weapon of cosmic scale, reaches out, not with aggression, but with a calculated, piercing curiosity. He feels the raw, burning power of the dark side within Vader, a familiar echo of the forces he has battled for millennia. Lord Vader. The Emperor's voice is not sound, but a wave of pure thought, ancient and powerful, washing over Vader's consciousness. I have sensed your presence, a nexus of great power and great pain. Vader's own mind, a fortress built of rage and loss, is breached. He feels the sheer, overwhelming might of this being. It is not the subtle, corrupting influence of Palpatine. This is the power of a roaring sun, a psychic supernova that could annihilate him with a thought. Yet, it does not. Instead, it observes, "Who are you?" Vader's mental voice is a low growl, laced with suspicion and the ever-present hum of his own fury. He tries to erect his defenses, to push back against the intrusion, but it's like trying to hold back the ocean with his hands. "I am the guardian of humanity," the Emperor replies, his thoughts resonating with the weight of 10,000 years of lonely vigil. "And I sense in you a reflection, a tool of another's ambition, a warrior shackled to a throne that is not your own." The words strike a chord deep within Vader, a place he thought long dead. The Emperor isn't mocking him. He is ... Analyzing, he sees the cybernetics, the life support, the constant, grinding agony that fuels Vader's existence. He sees the Golden Throne, the machinery of the Astronomicon, and understands the parallel. Two titans, each bound to their machines, their wills, the only thing keeping them from oblivion. Your master promised you power. The Emperor's thought stream continues. Relentless, He offered you the galaxy, but gave you only ashes. He spoke of order, but sows only chaos for his own gain. I have seen his kind before. They are parasites, feeding on the grand design of the galaxy, leaving ruin in their wake. Vader doesn't respond. He cannot. The truth of the Emperor's words is a cold, sharp blade twisting in his gut. For decades, he has been an instrument of Sidious's will. The galaxy has been brought to heal, but at what cost? The peace is a lie, maintained by fear. The order is a brittle facade, ready to shatter your strength, your command of this force. It is a raw, untamed echo of the great ocean. The Emperor explains, showing Vader glimpses of the warp, of demons and gods of chaos that would make the darkest Sith Lord tremble. Your master dabbles in its currents, but he is a child playing with fire. He does not comprehend the true enemy. Vaporous, nightmarish images flood Vader's mind. Legions of grotesque horrors, worlds consumed by madness, galaxies screaming as they are devoured by entities born of pure malevolence. This is not the clinical destruction of the Death Star. This is a plague of the soul. A threat on a scale that dwarfs the petty struggles between the rebellion and the Empire. Beyond your galaxy, a shadow lengthens. The Emperor's thoughts become grave, imbued with the weariness of an eternal war, a darkness that seeks to consume all light, all life, all hope. It is the same shadow I have fought since the dawn of our species. For the first time, Vader feels something other than anger or despair. He feels a purpose, not the twisted purpose given to him by Sidious, but a glimpse of a greater conflict, a war for the very survival of all sentient life. He sees the Emperor, not as a conqueror, but as a warden, a lonely sentinel standing against an infinite tide of damnation. You are a weapon, Lord Vader, the Emperor states, his voice a hammer blow of cold, hard logic, but you have been aimed at the wrong target. Your rage, your strength, they could be used to defend, not just to oppress. They could be a bulwark against the coming night. The Emperor does not offer salvation. He does not offer redemption or forgiveness. He doesn't appeal to the ghost of Anakin Skywalker. He speaks to Vader, the warrior, the broken machine. He offers something far more valuable to a man like him, a worthy enemy, an understandable mission. I do not ask for your faith. The Emperor's final thought settles in Vader's mind, a seed of new allegiance. Faith is for the blind. I offer you a target. I offer you a war worthy of your power. The true enemy is at the gates of both our realities. The connection begins to fade. The psychic weight lifts, leaving Vader kneeling in the sterile chamber of his fortress. The hum of his own systems is the only sound. He is alone again, but the silence is different. It is filled with the echoes of a new, terrifying, and exhilarating reality. His master, Palpatine, wanted an apprentice, a blunt instrument of his will. This new entity, this Emperor of mankind, he wanted a general, a partner in a war that transcended stars and defined destinies. Slowly, Darth Vader rises. The familiar anger still burns within him, but now it has a new focus. It is no longer the petulant rage of a betrayed Jedi, but the cold, honed fury of a weapon that has just been pointed at the true heart of the darkness. The galaxy, the Empire, the rebellion, they suddenly seemed so small. A greater game was afoot, and he was now a player. The Emperor had called, and Vader, for the first time in a long time, had answered with a sense of purpose that was truly his own. The galaxy is a canvas of endless war, a tapestry woven with the blood of gods and mortals. In this age of unending strife, the Imperium of man, a bastion of humanity besieged on all fronts, clings to survival by the thinnest of threads. It is an era of legends, of heroes and monsters, of faith and firepower. But some legends are whispered only in the deepest shadows, spoken of in hushed tones by those who have seen the impossible. This is the story of one such legend, a figure of myth and terror, a weapon forged in a galaxy, far, far away, now unleashed upon the grim darkness of the 41st Millennium. They call him The Black Knight. He is a specter, a phantom that walks the bleeding edge of the Imperium's most desperate battlefields. He answers to no inquisitor, kneels before no living saint. He's not a Primarch, not a space marine, not even truly a man as others understand the term. He is something else entirely. A relic of a fallen empire, a master of a forgotten power, now bound by a new unspoken oath. This is the story of how Lord Vader became the Imperium's final, most terrible resort. His arrival was an anomaly, a tear in the fabric of reality itself. A ship, ancient and angular, unlike any design in the Imperial archives, was found adrift in the void, its systems dead, its hull scarred by energies that defied astropathic comprehension. Aboard, there was only one survivor, encased in black armor that was both archaic and terrifyingly advanced. He was a being of immense power, a storm of controlled fury and profound sorrow. The High Lords of Terra, ever pragmatic, ever desperate, saw not a threat, but an opportunity, an asset. They could not control him. Not truly. No psychic who could contain the maelstrom of his mind. No threat could sway a being who had already lost everything. But they could direct him. They learned that he possessed a singular, driving purpose. An iron will dedicated to a principle they barely understood. Order. An order born not of faith in a distant emperor, but from the brutal lesson that chaos, in all its forms, is the ultimate enemy of life. His creed was simple and absolute. He serves not the throne, but humanity. And so, the Black Knight was deployed. He became the unseen hand in the Imperium's shadow wars. The silent executioner sent to places where even the Grey Knights feared to tread. On the demon world of Xylos, where a word-bearer's legion was attempting to summon a Lord of Change, a single black ship pierced the Empyrean-tainted skies. The cultists and traitor marines who witnessed his descent saw not a man, but a harbinger of death. The air grew cold, the very ground seeming to freeze beneath his heavy, rhythmic tread. Then came the sound, a sharp, visceral snap-ease that cut through the cacophony of prayers to the dark gods. A blade of pure, crimson energy ignited, casting a hellish glow upon his obsidian armor. The demons, creatures born of raw emotion and fear, hesitated. They sensed something in him that was not of their realm, a disciplined, focused darkness that was anathema to their chaotic nature. He moved with a speed that belied his size, a whirlwind of black terrestrial and crimson light. His blade didn't just cut, it cauterized, leaving nothing but scorched metal and vaporized flesh. He raised a gaunted hand, and armored traders were lifted from their feet, their throats collapsing under an invisible, crushing force. He was a force of nature, a one-man when the last demon fell, its essence shrieking as it was torn apart not by faith, but by sheer, overwhelming will. The Black Knight stood alone amidst the carnage, and in the unnatural silence, a Vox transmission reached the orbiting Imperial fleet. His voice a synthesized, chilling baritone. The threat has been neutralized. The whispers have been silenced. He became a ghost story told by guardsmen on worlds ravaged by the tyrannid swarm. They spoke of a lone, dark figure who could stand against a tide of claws and teeth. A warrior who could sense the synaptic commands of the hive mind and sever them at their source. One agri world Delta 9, as a Genestealer cult uprising threatened to consume the planet from within, the Black Knight was there. He moved through the infested underhives like a phantom, his presence a cold spot in the warm, cloying air. He hunted the Patriarch not as a soldier, but as a predator. He met the creature's alien psychic might with his own focused power. A battle of wills fought in the shadows. The cultists found their god emperor, a broken husk, its multi-limbed body crushed and discarded. The rebellion, decapitated and leaderless, faltered and was purged. Even the enigmatic Aldari came to know him. On a maiden world, cut in the path of an Orkwog, where Imperial forces fought alongside Craftworld allies in a rare, strained alliance, he was the tipping point. The Farseers saw his arrival in their rooms not as a clear destiny, but as a singularity, a point of absolute darkness that absorbed all possible futures. They watched in horrified awe as he strode into the green tide, a solitary rock against which the waves of orcs crashed and broke. He was not merely killing them, he was imposing his will upon the battlefield. He was an artist of destruction, and his masterpiece was absolute, terrifying order. But it is in the quiet moments, in the sterile chambers of his vessel between battles, that the true nature of the Black Knight is revealed. He stands before a holographic star chart, not of this galaxy, but another. The mask remains, but the oppressive aura of menace recedes, replaced by a profound, echoing silence. It is a silence filled with ghosts, the ghost of a desert planet under two suns, the ghost of a queen, a senator, a wife, the ghosts of children betrayed by his own hand. In these moments, he is not the Imperium's weapon. He is Anakin Skywalker, a fallen knight trapped in a prison of his own making, forever adrift in an unfamiliar sea of stars. His purpose here is a penance, a final, eternal war against the chaos he once embraced. The warp, the demons, the insane gods who feed on pain and despair, they are merely a new face for an old enemy. They are the ultimate expression of disorder, the very darkness that consumed him and his galaxy. By fighting them, by enforcing a brutal, rigid order upon this new universe, he seeks a form of redemption he knows he can never truly have. He whispers a single, undeniable truth into the void, a mantra forged in the fires of Mustafar and tested in the crucible of the 41st Millennium. The light can only live when the darkness obeys. He will never be a hero. He will never be forgiven. He is the Black Knight of the Imperium, a necessary monster for a monstrous age. And as long as the enemies of humanity claw at the gates, his crimson blade will ignite, a promise of swift, merciless order in a galaxy that has forgotten the very meaning of the word. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and where the war is darkest, you will find him. Thank you so much for joining us on this epic crossover journey. What do you think would happen if Vader encountered one of the Primarchs, or even the Emperor himself? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel,